All right, good morning, everybody. So this is Brittany Rogers. I am your host this morning. I'm with New York Sea Grant. I'd like to take a moment and thank everybody for joining us in the third series of our Watercraft Inspection webinar series. Our presentation today is Watercraft Inspection Steward Program application, and so we're going to talk about a pilot program that was ran during 2017, and we are going to continue with that in 2017. So I'm going to start by giving you guys a little bit of an introduction into where this application kind of came from and how we kind of got about to it. And when I say we, I refer to most of the watercraft inspection programs that were involved with this pilot program for 2017. With data collection, there were some challenges that still exist today and have existed in the past. And so New York State is unique in a sense that we have multiple different programs being ran across the state that aren't necessarily coordinating, not that they're not coordinating with each other, but they're not all one program. So there are other states, especially out west, who the entire state runs one program, and that's not our case. And so with all the different programs around the state, we found that, they're asking all different questions and kind of different information. There's a collective set of questions that are asked, but then there's other information that's also being asked. And then another challenge with paper data that kind of has been something that's been long coming and trying to figure out how to get around that. So for example, New York State Parks' steward program has over 20 locations, and their stewards run from Lake Erie all the way to the eastern end of New York near Albany. And so there's a huge range where the supervisors can't necessarily pick up paper data all the time if it's being mailed, which then kind of moves to the next step. So there's also the issues of people losing paper forms or getting wet and you can't read it, and legibility. I mean, there's an image on the screen here that you can read pretty good. You can see the name and the water body, but sometimes, I've tried to read through some paper data and you just can't read the writing. And so when you're going back into something 3 months later because you can't read one response, that's a problem. And so that, trying to figure out a way around that. And so then the next step for those coordinators is actually doing all the data entry. So uploading all those paper data into your computer and then analyzing all of that. And so the amount of effort and time that goes into reporting, and sometimes it takes a lot of time to create those reports, we were trying to figure out a way to get past that step. So then the other portion of it now, New York State's kind of big picture. And so we have all this awesome data about watercraft inspection programs, and we're just trying to figure out how we could compile all of the different programs together. And we really couldn't do that with paper data. And so there's inconsistencies. So you couldn't really do any good analyzing without changing responses and making everything kind of fit into a certain field. And so with that, in 2012, New York National Heritage Program started working with New York Sea Grant to create a free electronic data to use. And so this would help with getting the data uploaded online. It would speed up analyzing the data and then also speed up reporting. And so then trying to find a way to take less time and put less effort or less time into our reports. So 2012, that was being created. By 2013, it was live, and New York Sea Grant had used it. And in 2014, when the New York State Office of Park Recreation and Historic Preservation Steward Program began, they also started using this ODK Collect software, and it was free, which was great. And so you didn't have to pay for any of it, and you could just have the stewards using tablets, and they would upload everything to the computer, and everything was great. But then we realized that there were upload issues, downloading issues, and it wasn't really working efficiently. And so then there were more limitations that it was Droid only. And so you couldn't use any kind of tablet that you had to use with it. It had to be a Droid device. So this kind of brought about some discussions. So in 2015, 2016, there were data collection presentations at the Watercraft Inspection Steward Program Leaders Workshop. And so questions kind of came about, if there's these standardized sets of data that we're using from this handbook, why aren't we all collecting the same data? Why aren't we using it in the same thing so we can use it as all-around data collection method? And so conversations really started by 2016 is when it really started moving forward. And by the winter of 2017, it was, we need to update these standard fields and we need to get some a pilot program for the year 2017 and start getting all of our other organizations on board. So it was kind of looking at the benefits of using the standardized data. And so getting a tool or software that was free or of minimal cost to programs is really important. So the Adirondack Watershed Institute uses a wonderful tool. Unfortunately, the cost is out of range for many organizations, and not everybody is close enough that they can partner well with Adirondack Watershed Institute. And so trying to find something that all programs can use around the state that is of lower cost. Replacing those paper forms and those issues, creating a higher consistency in actual data collection, and then also finding something that you could send the data up to the cloud every single day where the program coordinators could review that every single day and get that information and know what's going on their, when their stewards are on the ground. And then, the other aspect of it is kind of seeing the statewide data in real time and getting a better analysis of what is happening in New York State, where priorities need to be focused, where boats were traveling to and from, finding those major hotspots of invasive species being spread to or from. And then also, these tablets can be used as an additional resource. So the photo here at the bottom, you can see two stewards have tablets in their hands, and they're actually using their tablets to help them identify invasive species. So while out in the field, instead of carrying around this huge 6-inch binder, which is what New York Sea Grant originally was giving stewards, and you can upload all of your PDFs and all of this information into this tablet where the stewards can have that resource on hand at all times. So say they do find something that they're not familiar with, they can look back at the resources and actually have that accessible to them. And so with that, I would like to introduce you to the next presenters this morning. So they're going to get more in depth of what this pilot program was and kind of how it's really morphed into what it is now and kind of moving forward for 2018. And so I'm going to introduce you to Meg Wilkinson and Heidi Krahling. And so Heidi has worked with the New York Natural Heritage Program since 1999 and has since morphed into the iMapInvasives information manager around the time that iMapInvasives went live. Her duties include taking these large data sets and putting them into iMapInvasives and creating custom data sets for those who request them. More recently, she has helped develop mobile device data collection forms, such as this Watercraft inspection form that she'll be demoing during the webinar. And then our second presenter is Meg Wilkinson, and she has been the Invasive Species Database Program Coordinator since the initiation of iMapInvasives in 2007. And iMapInvasives officially went live in 2010. And for those of you on the line who aren't familiar with what iMapInvasives is, it is a collaborative GIS-based online tool for invasive species management. And so iMap helps New York Natural Heritage Program facilitate conservation and New York biodiversity by providing this comprehensive information to resource managers and conservation partners around the state. And so with all of that, I am going to stop my presentation and pass it along to Heidi and Meg, and they will be moving forward with the rest of the information. So thank you again for joining us. And Heidi, can you unmute yourself and you can get started?
Thank you. Yes, I believe I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, great. As Brittany mentioned, my name is Heidi Krahling, and I am the iMapInvasives information manager for the New York instance of iMapInvasives. Anyway, we actually have iMap running in some other states and one Canadian province. All right, so this is just kind of our introductory slide to WISPA, which is our pet name for the Watercraft Inspection Steward Program app. And again, as Brittany mentioned, this came about via a partnership of 6 agencies who are willing to pilot this collection form over the summer, this past summer 2017. The survey is used with, I don't know if folks are familiar with ESRI, Environmental Systems Research Institute. Esri products have been around for a very long time and are very popular in the GIS or Geographic Information Systems world. Survey 123 is one of their products, and this is a mobile device data collection tool that the beauty of Survey 123 is that you don't necessarily have to have an ArcGIS account to be able to use the form. So this is why it works so well with the boat launch stewards. We could make it a public form so that all they had to do was download the Survey 123 app, which is available in the Play Store and the App Store for both Droid and Apple products. They could download the app and then load the public form and be able to use the form without having an ArcGIS online account. Now, the program coordinators, it was very handy for those folks to have an ArcGIS account because then they could go in and actually view the data live as it was being uploaded from the boat launch stewards. And as we'll show a little bit later, you can actually play with the data within ArcGIS Online as well. So while it's handy for the program coordinators to have an ArcGIS account, it's not necessary for all of the boat launch stewards to have one. And actually, even a program coordinator wouldn't have to have an ArcGIS Online account because we could still download the data and get it to them in Excel spreadsheet format. So it's not a requirement. It's not a requirement, but it's certainly a nice option and allows you to do much more with it. So this just shows kind of what the ArcGIS Online environment looks like, and we'll actually go in there and take a closer look. And then over here we have a screenshot of what the app looks like on the mobile device, and we'll get in there and actually step through Survey 123 app as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention too that we were quite surprised that just in the summer of 2017, with our 6 participating agencies, over 30,000 records were collected. So we were quite impressed with that amount of data being collected just with the agencies we were working with. And here is the list of the 6 agencies who were willing to pilot this data collection form. We worked with the Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Recreation. We worked with a number of PRISMs, and if you're not familiar with the term PRISM, that stands for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. And there are 8 of those that cover the entire state, and we were fortunate to work with a number of those with this pilot program. So SLELO, St. Lawrence and Eastern Lake Ontario, CRISP, Catskill Regional Invasive Species Partnership, the Capital Mohawk PRISM, the Lower Hudson PRISM, and we also worked with the Saratoga Lake Protection and Improvement District. So a smaller, more localized organization. They actually worked in conjunction with parks and combined their data with parks. So we thank these agencies for being willing to test the Survey 123 form. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and get into the form, and we will just step through it. Now, this is what it would look like if you're loading up your Survey 123 app on your mobile device. This is essentially what it would look like, and I have some other forms that are in progress as well. But this is the one we're interested in, the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers. So that brings us to our opening screen. We can start collecting data. And I'm going to go ahead and use one of our SLELO coordinator. I'll log in as him. Now here, because this is a public form, we wanted to have a way to still vet the users and make sure that anyone just couldn't find this form, load it, and then start entering data that wouldn't necessarily want. So what's nice about Survey 123 is it allows you to maintain a user list. So if whoever's logging in isn't on that user list, they will not be able to log in. So you still have the ability to keep track of your users. You don't have to require a password, which is nice, but that username is what then gets a person into the form. And depending on your username, the form is smart enough to affiliate you with a group, and based on that group, some of the questions can be specific to that particular group. So we see that Rob Williams is affiliated with the St. Lawrence and Eastern Lake Ontario PRISM. So his list of boat launches will be only applicable to that agency. So we can go ahead and just pick a boat launch name. And then I'm going to step through all the questions just so that folks can see the types of questions that we're asking. And with that, keeping in mind that it took a lot of pre-meeting to come down to, to come up with this short list of standardized questions and standardized answers, and that's very important because, you know, the whole point is to not have a lot of customization and different questions being asked with different answers. You want to be able to roll all of this data up. So it's important that the questions are standard with standard responses as well. So that investment of time early on is very important. You certainly don't want to be tweaking the form and adding fields and changing answers mid-season. You want to try to have this hammered out as best you can before you launch the form. So we spent time with those 6 agencies trying to come up with this form. And we did customize, you know, some groups, obviously they collect different data for different reasons. So we did try and provide some customization based on the agency that their stewards are working with. You know, different questions might have been asked. But again, we try to keep that to a minimum. Otherwise, we're spending a lot of time making custom forms when the goal is really trying to standardize the question. Okay, so previous contact with a boat steward, yes or no? And I'll just go down through and answer questions as we go. Selecting the launch direction, are they going into the lake? Are they coming out of the lake? And we have group size, and that's the number of people in the group that the boat launch steward is interviewing. If it's 1, then obviously you're only going to have 1 watercraft type. So we could select, you know, whatever watercraft type that single person coming in with. Now, if there's more than 1, then we can ask, are there multiple watercraft in the group as well? So if we say no, then we can just select what type of watercraft they're using. If we say yes, then we can get all kinds of information about, you know, the different types of watercraft this single group is using. Now, we did limit this to only 1 motorboat per group. We were interested in, if there was more than 1 motorboat, we wanted those to be entered as separate records. I think the thought there was that motorboats are typically the type of watercraft that will have invasive species, will be more likely to find invasive species on them. So we want to make sure that each motorboat is being treated separately. So, but you get the idea here. You can, you know, talk about how many different types of watercraft used, and then it'll tally up the watercraft for the group. So there's a lot of smart logic on the back end of these forms, which is nice. We can get it to do a lot of stuff for us. Okay, and then you can enter the primary activity of the group that the boat launch steward is interviewing. General recreation, and again, these choices came out of working with the 6 agencies to get at, you know, what types of answers are they expecting to get at the boat launches. State where the state or province where the boat is registered, and here we have a full list, and into Canadian provinces as well. And you know, we can obviously change these pick list values as needed. We can add to them. Were spread prevention measures taken? If we say no, then it'll just skip us to the next question. Yes, no, or if we say no, unknown or not asked, we'll skip to the next question. If we say yes, then we can get more information about that. Which types of prevention measures were taken? And this is a multi-select, so you can pick as many as you want. If we choose other, then we have the ability to type in anything we want to here. And the next question was the watercraft in the water in the past 2 weeks. If we say no, it'll just skip us down to the next question. If we say yes, then we can give more information about that. Select the state or province. Now, if we select New York, then we still have to populate the county here. I mean, you could theoretically go in and for any state someone selected, you could then only give back the counties for that state. We just didn't go to that level of detail. it would take some time to populate the back end to have those pick lists customized for each state. But we did do, actually, we didn't even do it for New York, but that's something we might consider doing for 2018, so that then the launch steward doesn't have to type in the name and potentially misspell or you know, this could be a pick list of the 62 counties in New York State. Then we try to get at as much information as we can get at so that we can really narrow down where the boat was last in the water. And here we do have the list of water bodies. These were the most often, this list I think came from previous years of boat launch steward data collection, as far as which water bodies they were most likely to have as an answer for this question. All right. And again, we have that option. If we say other, we can enter the name of it here. So we can always, you don't have to pick it off of a pick list. If it's not there, you can still capture that information in a field. Okay. So now, did the Watercraft user agree to an inspection? If we say no, then we just go on down to the next question. If we say yes, then we can get more information. Were any organisms detected? If we say no, just move on. If we say yes, that's where we can start choosing which invasives were found on the boat during the inspection. And again, you can select, oops, sorry, my fingers are flying too quickly. Let me go back to that list of, we start out with a list of the common species. And that, again, comes from the agencies who have that experience, and they know the answers that they're most likely to get. And we put that list first. So we try and make it as easy as we can for the boat launch stewards while they're out, you know, obviously interviewing people who are very interested in getting on the water as quickly as they can. So we try to make this as easy and painless for everyone involved, so they can look for their answers. And some agencies we worked with were just truly interested in what, if anything, was found. It didn't even have to be invasive species necessarily. They're interested in anything that was found on the boat. It could be captured in this form. Okay, so then if the species is not listed, then we pull up our full list, the list of species that we track within iMapInvasives. So then the boat launch steward can go down and select, again, multi-select as many of these as are found. You can see it's quite a long list. And then even still, if it's not listed or they haven't found it, they're able to enter it into a text box, whatever that, or, you know, if they're unsure, you know, they can enter that information here as well. And then, this is important too, we allow them to take photos. So they can take a general photo, and then they can zoom in and take a photo of the identifying parts of the invasive. They can either do it with the mobile device, or if for some reason they had a picture and it was saved on the device, they could navigate to a folder, to a location on the device, and load it from there. Sample ID, that was one of the agencies was interested in tagging samples with ID numbers, so we added that as a field. Okay, and a couple of other, these I think were some custom questions for an agency or two who were interested in them. Were information materials given? Yes or no? Would you use a decontamination station if available? And where will the watercraft be launched next? So this is where we can see, okay, the boat, the next time it's going to be in the water, it's going to be, and we can give some information about that. And
that's specific if they were bringing it out. This is a retrieving, or is that either way?
It could be either way. If they're launching into that current water body, you could still ask the question, where will the water body be going next, in case they might not catch them coming back out of the water body. So it would be good to capture this information as they're going into the current water body.
Thank you.
Sure. And then what route will you take to get there? And I think these questions were specific to the SLELO group.
Yep.
who was using the form. So as you can see, again, we can customize it to certain agencies who are interested in additional information that, other folks might not be as interested in collecting. So other agencies wouldn't see this particular set of questions. And then we just have a general comments field where folks can enter anything that, weather, any additional comments that can't be captured in any of the other fields. Then we have a nice record summary so that you can just do a quick check. Okay, yeah, that is what I intended for this form on some of the more important fields. And then you would click and save. And I'm not actually going to step through this, but if you click the checkbox here, you can save the survey, and then you have the option to upload the survey right away. And that would be my recommendation. If it doesn't take long for the survey to upload, I would recommend having it upload right away. The surveys will save on the device, and then they can be uploaded later. And that would be important if you were out of connectivity and you couldn't upload the surveys right away. You would have to do it later. So that's basically what the form looks like and the questions that are asked. I'm going to go back to our PowerPoint presentation. And we can talk a little bit about kind of post-season, what we found has worked well and what didn't work so well, and what we might do about those things. Matt Brinkoff with Parks sent out a survey to the folks who piloted the form over the summer, asking questions, trying to get some of that follow-up and feedback. How did it go? And so I thank Matt for doing that. That was great. We were able to get some great information from that survey. And what we discovered was that folks really liked the fast and short data entry. I mean, the whole idea was to really keep it quick and easy for the boat launch steward and for the recreationist, taking the survey and wanting to get on the water as they could. So that's one of the keys, is trying to keep it as short as you can and still get at all the information that you're hoping. The drop-down choices made data entry faster. So having those so that the boat launch steward didn't have to type anything in, that was nice. That was nice and easy. One of the things that I think was noted in Matt's survey was especially beneficial was being able to see the data that their boat launch stewards were putting in, that same evening, or if they're putting it in live, they could see it right away during the day even. That was really handy. And having that data feed into ArcGIS Online gives it the potential for immediate analysis. Meg will show some of the stats that immediately view once the data has been uploaded and is in ArcGIS Online. Okay, so of course there were some things that didn't work well, and we expected that. Being a pilot project, that's what we're hoping to learn from our mistakes and be able to improve for next season. There were a couple of things that were beyond our control, and one of them was an update of the Survey 123 app that went out in late June. And for folks on their mobile devices who have their setting as upgrade automatically, the app updated and it rendered some of our drop-down pick lists non-existent. So we had to, my colleague who has since moved on, had to, alert Esri that this was happening, and he of course wasn't the first person who was alerting them to this unfortunate situation. And then basically fix our version of the survey form and push it back out, and have all of the mobile devices install that fixed version. Or if they hadn't updated to the new version of the Survey 123 app, then they would be okay. So, again, those kinds of things that are out of our control, but we're fortunately able to as quickly as we could fix and address. Just things to keep in mind when you're kind of at the mercy of the folks who are developing the software that you're using. Another one that came up was glare from the sun. And obviously, we don't have control over that. And I think that's been an ongoing problem with mobile device data collection in the field. A couple of things that we found help if you increase the brightness on your setting. Set your highest brightness setting on your device. That seems to help. And you can also change the font so that the font is bigger. The questions, will appear larger on your screen. That might make things better. And that's another setting within Survey 123, Survey 123 app. So we did find some things that help. So another few things that were within our control and that we can do things about. The Survey 123 form applies a live timestamp to the survey. So when it's saved, that timestamp is captured, and that is what is then applied to that record. There were some situations where folks had to enter their data later. Either they had, battery was dead or something caused them to have to enter the data later, and that live timestamp would then be applied at 11 o'clock at night. So that looked a little odd, as to why that was happening. So one of the things that we can do to fix that is to have an override, essentially add fields that would allow a person to enter the true time and date stamp. So they could, even if they're entering it 11 o'clock at night, they could say that it happened earlier that day or a previous day. That's an easy fix. Another issue we ran up against was with the boat launch coordinates. Now again, the Survey 123 form is going to capture the coordinates in the background. So if it has a GPS, if the mobile device has a GPS, it will know where you are and it will mark coordinates. Some mobile devices that were out there did not even have GPS. So it was essentially putting those boat launches at 00, which is off the coast of Africa. So we were having the unfortunate conglomeration of points appearing in the ocean off the coast of Africa. We can, again, set an override for that by allowing, or by having a file that essentially assigns the coordinates to boat launches. We know where those boat launches are in the real world. We can assign coordinate fields and have those coordinate fields override the mobile device capturing those coordinates. In some instances, program coordinators wanted to make sure that their stewards were where they were supposed to be. So they'd like to actually have the mobile device capturing those coordinates. So we could still do that as well. But in those instances where location services are turned off because it's better for the battery if that's turned off. We found that in a couple of cases, that the location services would just drain the battery too much. The stewards were having to turn it off anyway. We can have a file that attaches coordinates to those boat launch stations. And then finally, there were some communication challenges. It's an issue when you have boat launch stewards out at a boat launch, and if problems happen right then and there, what do they do? If the tablet isn't working, the survey's not loading for some reason, there has to be a plan B. So if it goes back to paper data collection or spreadsheet, some other form of data collection, that certainly is necessary. And then for us as the folks kind of developing the form, finding out about those problems as quickly as possible. I think that is something that moving forward, we need to instill in the boat launch stewards and the coordinators as well, that the sooner we find out about problems, the more likely it is that we can fix them quickly and lose fewer days to having to use paper forms. Sometimes we weren't finding out about problems until weeks had passed, and we're losing a lot of mobile data collection because of it. So we can keep those communication lines open and current, then I think we'll be much better off. Okay, so now I'm just going to quickly go into ArcGIS Online and show you, again, this is for program coordinators. They can see the data immediately. So the boat launch stewards wouldn't be able to go in and do this. This is where the boat launch or the program coordinator would have to have an ArcGIS Online account to be able to go in and view the data that their boat launch stewards are collecting. And on our end, what we do essentially is create groups, and we make the program coordinators members of those groups. So they're only seeing their data. So in this case, we're looking at the SLELO data. And then again, we create these. This isn't immediately available like this. You have to do a little bit of finagling in the ArcGIS online environment to create what's called a web app that allows the program coordinator to go in and eventually pull up a map of their data. Here again, we're looking at SLELO and the drawing collapse table down. So we can see points are where they should be in the St. Lawrence and Eastern Lake Ontario region. So we can view the points this way. You can click on them to identify and pull up. And here, if you're clicking on a point, obviously at one boat launch location, you're getting 154 records. So you'd have to zoom in to really teasing those out. But it just gives you an idea of what you can do anyway. So you can look at the records in this format. Let's go back. I find it to view them in table format. So you can view the records here. It just takes a while to load again, although it might be trying to load. One thing we've noticed in ArcGIS Online is it likes to do the view extent of the map. So cover up your map, and it doesn't think you have any records. You can turn that off, map extent. And this is where the program coordinators are learning, I think, that they have to play around with this. Really have to get used to this environment. Once they do, there's a lot of potential here you can do. So you can open records from within the table and look at them that way. And you can see all the data there. You can also sort on these fields if you're interested in, seeing the most recent entered records. Those there. My colleague created a couple of widgets where you do a little bit more finagling with the data. Query for the data based on launch, a bunch of fields, whatever fields we think make sense to be queryable. So I just want to point out that there's a lot of potential here, and we haven't really dived too far into it either. Again, being a pilot year, this is something we hope to capitalize on, though, for benefit of the program coordinator to be able to go in and really look at and play with the data. You can edit data from here also, actually, if you. So if there was someone who mis-ID'd, I've just done this. You can go in and edit the data. I know you can change field data. You can actually delete records if fake records had been entered.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Great.
It's not behaving for me at the moment, but it's there. And here you can go in and draw a polygon around features to select certain features. So you can query for features, you can select features, you can view charts for specific fields. And again, these can all be customized, which fields you're interested in, add those here. We can look. So you can see the number of surveys by boat launch. So there's a lot of different stuff that programs can start looking at immediately and live. Oh, and here you get a sense of our boat launches off the coast of Africa. So those we'll have to go in. That's some of the back end post field season cleanup that we'll have to do. We'll have to end up getting these boat launch coordinates back. So yeah, that's just a really rough and quick idea of the kinds of things that program coordinators can go into ArcGIS Online and look at. I'm going to go back to, given that it's 10:45, and I know Meg wants to show some things as well. Back to our PowerPoint. And just one last slide that I'll talk about is, so what will happen next? This month, the pilot testing agencies will meet in Ithaca and talk about, how it went and what we need to do and modify for the 2018 field. So that will be happening soon. And again, thanks to Matt Brinka for coordinating that effort. And then in January or February of 2018, we'll start the planning meeting for the 2018 field season. And, you know, we're hoping that additional agencies will be interested in that time in participating. And if so, then by all means, contact me. And I apologize for not having my email address.
nymap.org.
Yeah, so if you can just email me at Krahling, Krahling, at nynhp.org, then I'll know to include future planning efforts. Okay, that's it from me. I turn it over to Meg.
Next screen would see.
There we go.
So, but you can, I don't know how to push.
Okay.
So you went to the next two that you have.
Okay, so now we're going to look at, do you want to just give a little intro on what we're...
Sure. So first thing I want to do is credit our summer intern, Stephen Garney. We had a goal of being able to look at this information with analysis easy and at the state level. And Stephen created what I call an alpha site. It's not as far as a beta. But it's in the web app builder world, and at the moment we've only been using it to prove concept. So I believe the records here stop on like July 4th or something, and as you can see, we still have to do a lot with the layout. But I thought it would still be very interesting to look at. So one of the things we'll be working on for 2018 field season is making this available for the state view staff, like in the Office of Invasive Species Coordination Unit, which is now under the Bureau of something and Ecosystem Health.
Right.
Anyway, and then we'll also look into creating a version for each program, so that they would be able to have these instant statistics available for just the boat launches that they want to look at. The state level, having all of them was a huge advantage. So here's, you know, been set up by records by DEC region, records by organization. I'm not going to do it because I am not avid in this program yet, and I discovered last night if I click on one of these, it will then highlight all of them, but I had that belonged to that program, but I had trouble ever getting them back to the full data set. So we have down here count of invasive species. This is by the scientific, and then you can also do it by the common name. And then these you can move through. So this thing. Oh. Well, anyway, you can scroll. But anyway, you can scroll through those lists to see all of them because there's lots of them to see. There we go. The power is there. My skill to use it yet is to be learned. This is records by boat launch site, and you can slide along that bar and see different ones. We separated out when Heidi was going through the list of things you could label. Some of them are invasive species, and then some of them are other, like mud or grass, and you can view those totals. This is by the state of registry. New York, of course, has the most, but there's many others. This is by Watercraft type, and I was actually naively shocked that their motorboat was so dominant. I mean, I knew it would be like 50%, but I was surprised at how much it was. That's bias from somebody who is in kayaks. And then this one is also very cool to look at. So this shows day of the week. And of course, that is, you know, somewhat intuitive and also reflective of people know that there's not going to be as many people on a Monday or a Tuesday, so they don't staff boat launch stewards sometimes on those days. But I thought it was still very interesting to see the flow. That's pretty much all I wanted to show. We're just really excited about potential here. As you can see, we need to do a little more work on our end where this is ready for people other than us to use. But I think the ability of being able to look quickly at things, I did actually sit down and show this alpha site to one of the state aquatic invasive people in the middle of the summer, and they actually did notice that there were some hydrilla records in a place they didn't expect to see hydrilla records. And so that led to follow-up. They went down and met with the person, and indeed it wasn't hydrilla. And so I think that ability to act on the data during the field season will be huge. And also the ability to have the different ways to look at the different factors. Like if no data is coming in from a particular boat launch, what's the problem? You know, being able to use it for detection during the active field season, I think will be handy for program coordinators. Yes, there we go. Brittany, do you want to cover the wrap up or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Okay, I'll pass. Well, I guess we don't have to stop sharing. Did you have a different slide?
Yeah, it's fine. I can just take over from you.
Okay, great.
So there's an email at the bottom of the screen. So this is just a general iMapInvasives email address if anyone's interested in contacting them. But so what I want to talk about is just kind of the wrap up and kind of close up the pilot program for this year. So as I mentioned, there are over 30,000 inspections that were put into this system. And so that is that overnight quick response. As soon as the data is uploaded into the system, the program coordinators can see that. And so for the programs that did use it, there were no issues with people not being interested in taking the surveys or the surveys taking an increased amount of time with them using the tablets and to do the survey electronically. And so at the end of the day, it should actually be speeding up the process of the watercraft inspections. And so instead of a steward handwriting everything and taking that time to write out comments and everything else, they can just click and immediately move on to the next section. I know that Heidi was moving through it kind of slowly just to kind of give you guys a really good example, but it can be very quick and easy and simple to do. And so the users that are participants that are taking this survey and doing the watercraft inspections with stewards aren't kind of pushing against it. And so another thing that they mentioned that I'd really like to highlight is the fact that there was an invasive species being reported in a location that it had not been seen before. And so that kind of put on that alert and kind of sent a manager or a resource manager to go down to that location, survey for that specific plant to make sure that it wasn't there. And in this case, it was hydrilla, and it was being reported in a location that it wasn't. And so then the backside to that is that then in turn allowed the program coordinators to reevaluate their training and kind of give a little bit more focus of their training to plant ID and kind of work through that. So you have the different aspects of it. It actually can speed up the inspections. It's taking the misreported invasive species and putting those immediately on alert. And so then it got the opportunity for that rapid response, the early detection. So if it was the first time this plant had been seen in a water body or a species had been seen in a specific water body, it could be evaluated. So again, I'd really like to push forward and thank the Natural Heritage Program, specifically Heidi, Meg, and Brent, who is no longer with the Natural Heritage Program, but the efforts that they really put into creating this survey and working with the different programs. And so after doing this 2017 pilot program, we'd really like to see more programs getting on board and becoming involved. And so there are some hiccups or obstacles that programs have, but Meg and Heidi are both more than happy to answer questions. I'm happy to answer questions. I know that Matt Brinka has also done it, and he's happy to answer questions as well. And so he, again, Matt Brinkus with parks, and so he has around 20 around the state. The other aspect of it is really being able to put everything online and different users to be able to see that data and kind of get into it and kind of know what's going on.
Brittany, you and I'll also just iterate if people want to think about it and contact us later, they can go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's not you have to make your decision today kind of thing. It's, if your program is going to allow you to get over the obstacles of actually being able to do this, then absolutely feel free to contact everybody. The first question that I had was, were there any concerns about the length of this version of the survey, and can the app be used without data or Wi-Fi? And Heidi or Meg, if one of you guys want to answer that.
So as far as the survey length, I'm basing this on the survey that Matt Brinkus sent out to the program coordinators who tested it this past summer. I don't recall there being any feedback on the length as far as it being too long. It's something that, again, might come out when we meet in November and we're actually sitting in the same room and kind of going through it, step by step and nitty-gritty details. We might decide that it was too long. And yes, I was definitely going through it more slowly. I wanted folks who weren't familiar with it to see the types of questions we're asking and see if it does get at the types of questions that they'd want to be asking as well.
Also, Heidi, you covered every yes and no. So
yes.
In the field, you're going to pick one of those and then continue.
And it will go much quicker. I was definitely going through it slowly so folks could familiarize themselves with the questions, the specific questions we were asking. But again, no one that I heard from complained about the survey being too long. But we might find out more at the debrief in November.
Second part was out of connectivity.
Yes. Oh, right. The second part of that question was, will this run out of connectivity? And the answer is yes, it will. Because essentially, you have the app installed on the mobile device, and you've already downloaded the form. So the form will run on the app outside of connectivity. And then, you can save the survey records as you collect them. And then later, once you're back in connectivity, then you can upload the survey forms to the cloud. So the answer is yes, you can run it outside of connectivity. And that will happen certainly in, backwoods lakes and that kind of thing in the Adirondacks. Okay?
Great answer. Thank you for answering that. So the next one, I actually had a brief comment with a follow-up question that says, okay, so one of the programs that actually piloted this wanted to submit a comment in the chat box, and they just said that one of the most powerful tools of the WISPA is the ability to help visualize statewide spread potential of AIS. Having the knowledge of where boaters are going to and coming from on a large-scale basis, and what types of AIS have been observed at various launches was a key factor in prevention strategies. So a follow-up question to their comment was just kind of asking, so will this specific app be utilized by or offered to other programs throughout the Great Lakes region, especially considering the vast connectivity of the different states throughout the Great Lakes, and just kind of questioning about the region-wide analysis of AIS spread potentials. And so I think I can take that one on. And so just to start, I think right now the piloting this program specifically is focusing on getting New York on board, and that's one of the important things, is to kind of get all the different states around New York into this program, and then to move forward with figuring out what the Great Lakes regional, I guess, access to this data will be, or to their survey. So I know that many of the Great Lakes states kind of ask different questions during their watercraft inspections and have different methods. So I would like to say for Meg and Heidi, but you guys can say differently if you please. There's potential there that it could be shared with other programs around the Great Lakes, but I think the main priority is to get New York standardized first, and then we can kind of spread our expansion beyond that. I don't know if Meg or Heidi, if you guys have anything you want to add.
Brittany, thank you. That's great. Certainly any discussions like that would involve many people from around the state, and captured it beautifully. I think our focus at New York Natural Heritage Program for this 28 field season is making sure we get it up and running successfully in New York.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I don't see any other questions in the chat box, but again, I just want to kind of close out and again thank the Natural Heritage Program and those 6 programs who took the time and effort into putting their, their programs, their data into the system and kind of working through some of the kinks. So I know Heidi really talked a lot about some of the issues that were had this year, but most of those issues were simple fixes and just kind of something that's going to happen with the first year around. So year 2 should definitely be much more successful. Not that year 1 was not successful, but as we continue to get more programs involved in the data collection methods, like using Survey 123, we'll also be able to really see that statewide effort and see what's happening or where focuses need to continue to move forward. We have, so for interested groups, how can they set themselves up for using WISPA for their programs in the future? So Megan, Heidi, you want to answer?
Well, the first step would be to email Heidi, and then we'll get you on the list, and there will be an organizational meeting that Matt Brinka will organize for probably January or February. And we're happy to answer any questions that are needed. Have more, Heidi?
No, I guess some things to think about would be, the types of things that we need ahead of time would be the list of boat launches and the list of boat launch stewards. As much advance notice you can have on those as possible would be great. And then it's just a matter of having mobile devices and downloading the Survey 123 app, which is free. And then we'd add your boat launch stewards to our user list, and we'd roll out the survey and we'd make it known that the public survey was available, and then they would just have to go and grab it. So it's relatively easy.
I guess at this point, I am just going to kind of close this up. I don't see any more questions coming through. So just again, thank you, Megan, Heidi, for presenting today, and thank you everybody on the line for listening in and kind of learning more about this app that we've been using. I do have one more announcement that I would like to make. Again, I mentioned this last week, so New York Sea Grant is offering steward trainings in spring of 2018 with partnering up in Western New York, and we are hosting steward training and boater safety course and also down in Plattsburgh, New York. And both of these trainings will include the Survey 123 training for those programs that can get on board with their lakes and if they're interested in getting that presentation. And so again, those dates are May 21st through the 25th. So that's that week just before Memorial Day weekend.
And Brittany, I'd just like to add our thanks. We greatly appreciate your help with this webinar and the opportunity to talk about this pilot program that we are really excited about.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for getting on here and kind of showing everything through. I know that as we continue to work forward with everything, it'll be a lot smoother with the app, and kind of getting that data up on that dashboard is wonderful. And as many people probably saw, it's a pretty awesome opportunity to just get all the information that you need for your reports, real-time data, everything's analyzed for you, quick and easy. So again, on behalf of New York Sea Grant, I would like to thank you both, Megan and Heidi, for joining us, and for those who joined the webinar as well. I hope that you all found this information and this dialogue valuable and that it supports your work. And if you do have any questions about the pilot program or joining in and being a part of the process moving forward, contact myself, contact Heidi or Meg. We can all help you with that. So please don't forget to tune in next week for the final webinar of the webinar series. It is on Friday, not Thursday. It's on Friday, November 10th. And we'll hear from Richard Shaker from Ryerson University in Toronto, who also is the lead of GeoEco Design, which is in Syracuse. And he is the co-author of Predicting Aquatic Invasions Adirondack Lakes. And this will be a really interesting presentation to hear from Richard Shaker about the modeling that he created with partners. So again, thank you all for joining and have a wonderful rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thanks again.